I found out that my ex was a registered sex offender, the victim was a young child, on probation, considered at high risk to re-offend, and had several court-mandated restrictions and requirements. His dad and stepmother had helped him hide it from me for close to 3 years. I dumped him immediately and made no contact, but a friend of mine started dating him. She helped care for her sister's child, who was the same age and gender as my ex's victim. I told her, and she confronted him. He denied it and said that I was crazy and jealous and couldn't handle being dumped. She accused me of slandering him and trying to ruin his life. This was before the internet, so I showed her the court records I had copies of. She dumped him and outed him publicly. He then went on a campaign to trash me to anyone who would listen to his rants. I was crazy, a whore, cheated on him, had STDs, stole from him, physically assaulted him, turned tricks to support a drug habit. You name it, I did it. I'm just glad this happened in the early 90s, or he'd have put it all online and it'd have been a lot harder to put behind me. For me, I was with a guy for 4 years. The last 6 months of it, I had no idea he was cheating on me. I find out. I get upset, and I ask him to come over to talk it over. Mind you, I was really rational about the situation. I felt sad not only that he cheated on me, but that he must have felt trapped to do it in the first place. So I basically asked him why, after all this time, he couldn't just tell me that he wasn't interested in me anymore. He responded, "I just didn't want to hurt you." Well, it was a nice stab in my heart, but okay. A few days later, I check on my Facebook and I have all these messages from people that I am not necessarily friends with. I just knew them because they were friends with my ex. Well, their messages weren't kind to me, and even people for some reason were making notes and passing them along like those chain letters or fill in the blanks. So basically, these notes were poorly edited, photoshopped, might as well been paint, screenshots of convos where people twisted my words, making it look like I was the bad guy. Basically, I ignored these things. I was upset, but more embarrassed because honestly I found that my ex had been actually telling people these things were true. I asked him to kindly stop, but he kept insisting that he was stating facts. I kept telling him that those things weren't true. Soon after it died down and people stopped talking, he decided to come up with new things. Now he told people I begged for money and made him buy everything because I am selfish. People bought it LOL. Although I was the one who had a job, he never worked LOL. So I asked him again kindly not to say things like that, and he should be over me and focus on his new relationship. Well, it didn't stop. I got threatening messages from his girlfriend about harassing him and begging him to stop with my lies, and she told me some other stuff. Finally, I had enough. After all the harassment, I ran into him at the mall where he greeted me with a smile and gestured to give me a hug like we're friends. I told him that it's not appropriate and really, I just don't want to talk to him anymore. His GF was meeting up with him and she stopped by as I was walking away from him, and she started screaming at me in the middle of the mall. I kept trying to explain I had no intention of meeting him there. All the while she's screaming, calling me crazy. He's recording it all. I finally start to walk away. Confrontation isn't my thing. She grabs my hair and pulls me to the ground and keeps telling me to quit obsessing over her BF. I struggle to get away and finally a security guy shows up and she explains how I am causing commotion and apparently threw punches at her. He kicks me out. Hours later, I go on FB and see I have 75 messages, and I am tagged in something. Well, my ex recorded the whole fight, where I did nothing and basically get beaten up, on Facebook. People called me all kinds of scum, so I don't go on there anymore. So much drama. All that time, I was the crazy ex-GF, and honestly, I was more heartbroken that he was sad being with me than the actual breakup. I wanted to file a police report. I never did. He eventually got caught having sex with a 13-year-old. He was 19 at that time. Had court, never showed, and fled to Canada. That year, my birthday turned out to be dreadful. My mother received a positive biopsy result indicating that her cancer had spread and posed a significant risk. Meanwhile, I was dealing with workplace drama that necessitated laying off several long-term employees. Seeking solace, I reached out to him via text. His response gave me a glimmer of hope, hinting at a potential surprise celebration or dinner at my apartment. Upon returning home, I discovered him lounging in front of my TV, surrounded by fast food wrappers strewn across my couch. His cable had been disconnected. Feeling utterly miserable, I had intended to indulge in a bath and drown my sorrows in alcohol. To my surprise, his son appeared at my door. My ex had dropped him off, presuming I would babysit overnight while he indulged in a night out with friends at Hooters. Attempts to reach him by phone were fruitless, and when he finally answered, he dismissed my concerns, asserting that since I mentioned I would be home, there shouldn't be an issue. His distorted version of events? He claimed I broke up with him because he failed to get me a birthday present, accusing me of being overly materialistic. In reality, his accusations were deeply twisted. He continuously instructed his son to disregard anything I said, adamantly asserting that I wasn't his mother. Yet, he had no qualms about leaving his uncontrollable son in my care. Earlier in our relationship, his son had been playing recklessly with a super ball, dangerously popping it in and out of his mouth. Despite my warnings, my ex, unaware of his son's actions, dismissed my concerns. Tragically, the situation escalated when the child aspirated the ball, leaving him unable to breathe. I swiftly intervened, performing the Heimlich maneuver, dislodging the ball and saving his life. However, in the chaos of the moment, the child sustained bruises from my actions. My ex, seizing the opportunity, captured photos and used them as leverage during our arguments, threatening to press assault charges. Following each altercation, he would poison his son's mind, instilling fear and painting me as the antagonist. Despite this, he still expected me to regularly care for his son. Years ago, I met a guy. It was an instant attraction, for me, and for a time for him too. Things were pretty intense, and then for some inexplicable reason he faded on me. This was all over the course of 3 years. It literally drove me crazy when he faded on me. I couldn't understand why. I was so invested emotionally, just being near him made my body react. Everything just felt right when I was around him. So when it turned out he wasn't feeling the same, I couldn't understand it. I was hurt, so hurt and angry, and not knowing why sent me into a really weird headspace. I became obsessed. I never blew up his phone or anything like that. Instead, I tried to time things and be places I knew he'd be. When I heard from a mutual friend about an ex-GF of his, I got really jealous and paranoid. Was he seeing her again? Why? Why her, not me? What was wrong with me? So I became obsessed with her too, and this is where things got weird. I began doing drive-bys on both their houses. If I saw his car at her house, I'd drive around and around until he'd leave. I'd check to see when he was last logged on to Facebook. Seriously, that last online timestamp feature is a full stalker tool, and I'd try to work out if they were having sex by the number of times he logged on. Before long, though, instead of driving by, I began wearing a disguise and walking by her house. I never went to his, just hers when he was there. The pain I'd feel in my chest when I saw his car there was unbearable. I had to know what they were doing. Why her, not me? I escalated to crawling along in bushes outside her house in my ridiculous disguise to try and hear what they were talking about. I heard them having sex a few times. It was sick and creepy, and I really hate that I know any of that. My behavior got even worse, and I did a few other things I won't write here. Eventually, I began lurking around outside his house. Long story short, he came right out and confronted me one night, while in disguise. He said my name, but instead of seeming angry or weirded out, he just laughed. I stopped all my silly antics after that, but hell, why did I do it? I don't know myself. The worst part was that during all these lonely, sad nights I spent doing this, I knew it was crazy and weird, but I still did it. during the time I was in treatment for suicide attempts and BPD, but I still carried on like a weirdo. I never told my therapists about him or her or what I was doing. I wish I had the excuse that I was super crazy and was hearing voices or blacking out, but I made a choice. I hated doing it so much, but I still did, and I'm a seemingly normal, well-educated person. It's been a few years now, and thinking about it now, it's like it was someone else. Why did I do that? Will I do it again? Why did I get weird about him and no one else? I don't know.